Hi everyone, and thank you to Pragmatic for inviting me here today. My name is Beatrice Whelan, and I am a Global Digital Content Manager in Sage. And Sage sell cloud accounting and payroll software, but I'm not going to talk about Sage today. Today I'm going to be talking about the future of social media. So as part of my job in Sage, I work in a distributed team of about 40 social and content managers, and we work to engage the 1.6 million followers that we have across our social media communities. And part of my job is doing some future gazing. So the reason that we future gaze or attempt to future gaze in developing our social media and content strategy is really in an effort to future-proof our business, so that we remain relevant in years to come. It's also our attempt to get ahead of the competition and to try to be leading rather than following what our competitors are doing on social media. And ultimately it's to avoid investing in areas that won't pay off in the long term. And really future-proofing and future gazing is all about more medium and long-term return on investment than it is about short-term return on investment. And that's something that can be a challenging conversation to have with some business leaders, but it certainly is worth persevering with. So how does future gazing work? How can we attempt to try to see into the future? Well, what we do is we look at past and current trends and how they're evolving, and we attempt to apply them to an imagined future. And if we're thinking about trends and changes in social media, what an amazing year 2018 was. We had more change, I think, in 2018 than we had in a lot of the previous years on social. The year kicked off on January the 11th with Facebook Zero, or what many community managers have affectionately called the Facebook apocalypse. And what Facebook Zero was an announcement by Facebook that they would no longer be really surfacing brand content in an organic way in the newsfeed. Instead, they said they were going to surface what they called meaningful conversations. But what this meant for anybody who was managing a brand page on Facebook was 0% organic reach. So it meant if you posted something on Facebook, none of your fans would see the post. Now this had been coming for a long time. As far back as 2012, Facebook had started to limit what percentage of brand posts were seen in the newsfeed. And by 2014, we were down to about 6% organic reach on Facebook. So for every 100 fans that you had, only 6 of them saw your post. And around that same time, Facebook was unofficially advising community managers to prepare for Facebook Zero and 0% organic reach. But before the ink had even dried on that announcement, and actually before the algorithm change had even been rolled out, we had the massive privacy storm with Cambridge Analytica that happened in March. And all of a sudden, everyone in social media was rocked by this privacy scandal, where I think it was over 80 million Facebook profiles, their data was given to this company called Cambridge Analytica, and ultimately led to Mark Zuckerberg having to testify at Congress in April. So much change and so much happening in this year already. So let's take a look at what happened before 2018. How have we gotten to this point in time? Well, actually, the 10 years before that, we really lived in what I call the golden age of social media. So during this time, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn dominated and actually defined social media. So during that time, if you had asked anybody, what do you mean by the word social media, they would have found it difficult to give you a definition without mentioning those platforms. They were the golden triumvirate in the age of social media. And during that time, community managers and social media managers spent all their time and effort and all of their company's money trying to figure out how to get their content seen and engaged with on those channels. The golden period is over. we have now reached the end of the golden age of social media, and the old rules of social media no longer apply in the future. Now, many people think that we are just about, or we have already reached what's called peak social. And peak social is the point in time which the number of daily active users of those social channels, the growth starts to level out. So we're starting to see little or highly reducing growth in the daily active users on Facebook and Twitter, especially in the US and Europe. There's still some room for growth in some developing markets, but we're starting to see Facebook and Twitter level out their growth. And of course, what comes after the peak? Well, a decline. Now, LinkedIn don't publish their daily active users, but I bet you that they're probably having the same challenges that Twitter and Facebook are having in terms of peak social. So Facebook and Twitter actually cited the GDPR as contributing to this decline. And GDPR was another massive consequence for everybody in 2018. And in fact, before then, Facebook had been struggling to reverse a 21% decline in original sharing or personal updates from its active users. So even where people are logging into the channels to see what's happening, people aren't posting as much. And this is a problem for those channels. Now, Facebook owned Instagram and WhatsApp are still growing. Instagram has 1 billion active users. And in the short term, if you want to know where to invest your efforts on social media in 2019, it's Instagram, because that's where it's growing at the moment. And that's where you will have more organic reach than you have on Facebook. But you have to ask yourself, what happens 3 years from now or 5 years from now when we hit, the Instagram apocalypse and we're at 0% organic reach on Instagram? And that is the future that we are heading towards. So what changed? What happened to bring us from this golden age of social to where we're coming to next? Well, what happened is during that 10-year period, those social channels matured, they evolved, they went public, and they developed sophisticated paid advertising products in order to drive results for shareholders. They also were trying to distinguish themselves from each other and respond to incumbents, and you had like Facebook buying Instagram and so on, and that itself changes the nature of social as well. So all of this brings us to where we are today and where we are in the future, and that is what I call the post-social age. So the post-social age is going to be the next 10 years of social, and it's going to be very different to what has come before. And there's certain characteristics or certain trends that we can see happening right now that is going to define what happens in that post-social age that I'm going to talk about now. So one of the characteristics is the end of the social media triumvirate as we know it. The disruptors, are they themselves going to become disrupted? So Mark Zuckerberg was, a massive disruptor when he created Facebook, but there's going to be other disruptors that come into the market to shake Facebook up. Some of them are going to be purchased like Instagram, but that in itself will change the social media ecosystem. Twitter are struggling with their identity, saying that they say that they're no longer a social media app. They say that they're a news app. Now, in terms of disruptors and different examples that we can look at, one example is the Girl Boss Collective. The Girl Boss Collective is soft launched in October. It's going to be hard launched in January, when it's going to be open to everyone. And it's founded by the original Girl Boss. So anybody who watches the Netflix program Girl Boss will be familiar with Sophia Amoruso, but she founded Nasty Girl back in 2006, and that was one of the first global e-commerce retail sites. And she says that LinkedIn was built for another era of work. She says that LinkedIn is no longer relevant. And she's built a Girl Boss Collective not exclusive, but aimed at female entrepreneurs. So we're going to see these disruptors creating new social channels that are going to define this post-social age. And it's really interesting to see the Director of Communications at Microsoft, who own LinkedIn, posting on LinkedIn about the role of more niche social networks, where people will connect based on shared interests rather than an algorithm that defines what content that you see. And he actually cites Ello for the creative space as another example of a niche social network. And I'd never heard of Ello before I saw this post. And that's fine, because it's not for me. So what we're going to see move to is, instead of having like 3 or 4 big social networks to have like billions of active users, we're going to get many smaller niche social networks defining the post-social age. And it's going to give us a real sense of community. And it's the sense of community that we all were promised with social media, but may never have actually felt. In these niche social networks, we're going to be able to have more meaningful conversations, right? Built on like getting to know each other, not built on sound bites and trolling. So there's going to be a move away, let's all hope, from this toxic nature of social media that defines a lot of the interactions that people have. People will share in a much smaller, more private way. So the social media activity, most of it is no longer going to happen in public. Remember, Facebook are seeing that decline in public sharing. So the activity is no longer going to be happening in public. Instead, we're going to be transitioning to these private groups and messaging apps. And actually, this is going to really change what we even understand social media to be. This has already happened. This happened back in 2015, when the number of daily active users of the messaging apps actually took over. It became bigger than the number of daily active users of the social messaging apps. And we're already seeing this in terms of referral traffic to websites. This is not from Sage, this is from a company called Get Social, and they've been publishing about how referral traffic from dark social is actually larger than referral traffic from Facebook. And we saw this in Sage actually years ago. It's more prevalent and happened quicker for B2B businesses. And what dark social is it's private social that can't be measured in Google Analytics. Google Analytics sees dark social as direct traffic, but there are ways that you can apply custom segments to actually be able to see what traffic is coming from dark social channels. And it's already taken over the 3 social channels combined. Another characteristic that is going to define the post-social age is the decline in trust of the social channels, and this decline in trust is going to result in more regulation, and the regulation is going to challenge the business models that the social media platforms are using right now. So during that golden age of social media, people trusted social, and they trusted it until we gave them a reason not to trust it anymore. And the Cambridge Analytica scandal was that reason to not trust it. Unfortunately for Facebook, it came at a time when we were all kind of sensitized to privacy because of the GDPR law that came into force in 2018. That made everyone a lot more aware about their privacy expectations online. And so when the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, it had a much more significant impact. So much so that the Edelman Trust Survey shows that globally only 41% of people trust social media. And actually in the UK it's only 24% of people trust social media. So decline in trust is increasing, and that is going to increase the regulation, and it's also going to reduce the number of people who are using these social channels even more, pushing us up into the peak social and ultimately the decline over the top. But what I found interesting about this was one person saying that this demonstrates that Instagram is a lie machine. And when you have people calling your platform a lie factory or a lie machine where people go to create lies, you know that you have trust issues. Anytime that these channels do things that's not directly, related to paid social, are they really just, encouraging more content to have more inventory for more ads? What this is actually going to result in is that those incumbents, those disruptors coming into the market that I mentioned earlier, are going to have to come up with new business models to drive their profitability, because using people's data to serve them ads is not going to be a business model that will continue to sustain social media in the next 10 years. And the Girl Boss Collective that I just mentioned is a perfect example of that, because that's actually a paid channel. To join Girl Boss Collective, it's going to be $15 a month. So that's a new channel, it's a niche channel, and it's also a paid, as in you pay to be a member rather than giving up your data. So in the short term, if you want your brand and its content to be seen on the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, then you do need to invest in paid social in the short term. And it's not just about buying more ads, it's about investing in people who can manage the channels, and also investing in the measurement so that you can see if this paid advertising is actually having an impact. And you can see when it stops having an impact and be ready to tune it down or turn it off. Finally, one of the other characteristics of the post-social age is going to be the technology advantages of the fourth industrial revolution. And these are changes that are going to start to kick in, 3 to 5 years from now. Imagine seeing your bank statement that you share with your partner in a newsfeed format, and allowing you each to comment to each other, well, we need to spend less on eating out next month. So these are the types of paradigm shifts that you will see us moving to in the post-social age. A lot of this is going to be driven by 5G technology. So we're going to see 5G starting to enter the market in 2019 and 2020, and it's this connectivity that is actually going to drive a lot of the technology advantages that we're going to see in the post-social age. So this is Facebook's 10-year plan. This is what Facebook says the future looks like. And they published this in 2016. And you can see that towards the second half of their 10-year plan, we're seeing all this stuff around connectivity. And a lot of that is really going to come into play with your future of social media is already here. It's already happening. So since 2016, there was over 30 algorithm changes on Facebook, and each one of them provided a challenge but also an opportunity to businesses. And you have to be ready in the short term to take advantage of those. In the more longer term, you need to be able to future-proof your social channel plan. And this means being ready to jump on those new niche social networks and disruptors as they emerge. You have to dedicate at least 30% of the time you spend on social to testing new platforms and tactics that are emerging on social, so that you're not just putting all of your time in those existing social channels. And if we learned anything from Facebook Gate, it's don't build your house on rented land. So even as these new channels emerge and you start to put your time and effort into them, you have to have a much more sustainable plan for how you manage social. So are you defining the future, or are you waiting for it to come? Don't wait for it to come. As I said, invest in your own properties like your website, and then be ready to jump on those other opportunities as they come up. Thank you very much.